Good evening, everybody. Welcome back from the holiday break, but have not been taking a break from work. And I just realized, stand by, I need to lock my door. Sometimes kids just barge in. Okay. All right, let's get right into it. What are we working on? The last stream I did, which seems like it was ages ago, I talked about next steps of pushing the tech forward, specifically around um, the mobile apps. And so that's what we're going to be messing with today. So I've decided, for all those that have been saying it the whole time, like, you should do Flutter, you should do Flutter. Have you looked at Flutter? Why don't you take a look at Flutter? I'm taking a look at Flutter. So I did a bunch of research, like side by side. I got down to Flutter and React Native as a potential. We're not there yet, but as potential code once, deploy twice approaches to mobile apps. So the idea, for those that may not be familiar, right now I have an iOS app and I have an Android app. They're separate repositories. They're both modeled after the samples from Espressif. I took those and sort of reskinned them, took out a couple pages, added a couple pages, and deployed them. You can download them from the store, and I have customers. We shipped a good number, not as many as I was hoping, but we shipped a pretty good number for the holidays, for Christmas here in the United States. And so that's going well, and they've been coming online inside Deploy the Fleet, so I know that people are getting them set up. But they're two separate apps that I have to maintain. So any changes I want to make, I have to make in both places, and it's a lot to context switch. So when I was doing the iOS one, I was like super in it, doing it just fine. When I was doing Android, I was doing fine. But now when I go back and I look at them, it's like, oh, I got to wrap my brain around them. And so making a change, I've got to duplicate now going forward. And that's okay. That got me to launch and it was quick. But now I got to a point where the decision I made to move forward the fastest with delivering products. So the big thing, challenge that we're going to have is, again, I've covered this in past streams. I have to program every single device before it goes out specific to the customer's stats that they want to have it follow. And so the best way around that would be to have an app. Inside the app, they can choose the team or the player, whatever they want to track, as well as their time zone. And then I can just take, the product and ship it, and it's all configured on the user end. And so as I was thinking about adding the ability for people to change those things, I was like, I'm going to have to make this in both places. Maybe now is a good time to look at Flutter. And so that's where we're at. So let's take a look at some things. All right, we'll come back to this. In the meantime, however, do not allow. Okay. I binge watched courses on Flutter. I swear this thing is a piece of junk. All right, let me see if I can get this turned back. Well, we'll use that in a minute. This USB thing I bought is just not wanting to power my GoPro, which we're going to need. Okay, so binge watching Flutter stuff, content Pluralsight, like trying to learn Dart. I bought a course from Udemy on learning the Dart programming language. Like, we're really just trying to consume as much as I can to learn Flutter. So Dart is the language that you code in when you're using Flutter. And again, the idea is you code this once and you can deploy it to both Android and iOS app stores. And so as I was going through that, the layout in Flutter is what's called a declarative syntax. So you code up the way it looks. And unless you really are experienced to know what you're doing, that's tedious, like super tedious. And so what I found was Flutter Flow. And I'm going to drag it over here so you can see it. Let's maximize it. There we go. Okay. So Flutter Flow, just flutterflow.io, is a way to, basically well, let me show you. I'm going to come into my stat feeder config project here. and it's a way that you can drag and drop. It's kind of like a WYSIWYG editor, but it's still helpful to know like how Flutter does the layout. And I have no idea why it's like flashing on and off here. It was really weird. So Flutter Flow is about a year old. It's very capable, but it's still up and coming. But it's a great tool. Let me just try and refresh this and see if that goes away. It's got some quirks like that in it. We're not off to a good start for me showing this to you. Okay, not going to flash anymore. Great. And so anyway, it's this kind of column row based, if you've done that before, and you drop things in, but they have some templates. And so if I come back to home here, I'm going to click on this eDrive sample, which the entire thing they've created. I haven't done any of this. And if you come to here and then click on these buttons down here, it'll show you all the screens. And so like they've designed all of these screens, and I looked through they have about 5 or 6 sample projects. I looked through them and I was like, this one has the most dialogues that are near what I'm looking for. And I just came in here and started like, hey, I'm going to use whatever, this dialogue. Let me copy it. I'm going to use this page. And what we ended up with, we'll go back. The reason I kept this is so that I can grab any of the pages I want and copy them over into mine. But where we ended up is similar. Let's go here. Is this right here. So there were a couple things that I wanted to do with the original apps that I just didn't have time to figure out how to do on both Android and iOS. But now with Flutter, and I have this sort of template to go off of, super easy of putting it all together. And so what I'll do eventually is once I have all the screens that I want, this is very similar to the app I currently have, just recreated the screens. I can download the code, and then like I have the UI piece of this ready to go. And so this is one half of the app, is like the actual UI. And it's really neat. You can like run this on the web and you can assign actions. You can actually build quite a bit of the app in this sort of like low, no code approach. And so I've been working on this. This is not going to have the same animated GIF. It's just a placeholder for now. But anyway, so I've got that all figured out. The piece that I was missing and that I've been playing with recently, and what I want to show you briefly today, is you can make this all day long and make all the screens and make it look pretty. If you can't connect to Bluetooth and do the provisioning over, to the ESP32, none of it's going to matter. And as I was doing my research, something that I can share between React Native and Flutter, Flutter to me seems like the future. Like I hate saying like it's an either or, like React Native's dead. It's not. I think Flutter, if you look at the adoption, it's getting a lot more adoption and attention, and community is growing. The React Native one is much more established. If you want to do it in React Native, somebody else has already done it, and you can just find that information. And so there's a lot more of an existing community and body of work for React Native. Flutter's still new, still changing. But it does look like that's where the majority of current effort and going into the future is being placed. That could change, but anyway, that was my assessment. However, this isn't just a normal app. I need to talk over BLE to the ESP32 in this case. And you need a library to do that. So Bluetooth is a native, drawing the UI and things like this is all, Flutter has its own UI thing. It's going to draw this the same on Android and iOS. None of that's going to be a problem. That's part of what Flutter provides. What it doesn't provide is access to native OS functionality like Bluetooth. And so for that, you need packages, things that other people provide. You can get those from pub.dev. And so there's this whole, like, if you're familiar with Node.js, it's kind of like your NPM for Dart and Flutter. And so people write the native extensions so that you get native iOS Bluetooth or BLE and native Android BLE, and it's all wrapped up into Dart so that you can use it in your Flutter application. Same thing with React Native. You have to have a library that does the BLE. when I did all the research on that, the BLE library for React Native is far more current and maintained than the Bluetooth, the most popular and used Bluetooth package in the Flutter ecosystem, if that makes sense. And so I was down the road of going React Native. I'm more familiar with JavaScript, which is what it uses. The BLE piece looked more mature. Even while I'm saying this, it may have been a better idea to do it, but here we are. Where I went with this is I like the future potential of Flutter better, and I figure that support's only going to get better over time. And so what I decided to do was test it. Like, can it do what I need it to do today in the state that it's in, even if it's less maintained? If so, it should only get better over time. And so I did this backwards. So for anybody that's watching, do this the other way around. I spent a bunch of time like recreating the UI in Flutter Flow when I should have done what I'm about to show you, which is test the Bluetooth functionality first to make sure that that was even feasible, because if it's completely broken, I wouldn't waste any of my time building the UI, if that makes sense. So let's take a look at what we did. So I'm gonna close this. I need to find a different, sorry, stand by, because I bought a USB-C power cable to power the camera and it just doesn't, like, it hates itself. So let me fix this. First. Okay, I do have one that I know for sure works, so I will use it. Throw this piece of garbage away. No. Stand by. This demo is assuredly not going to work if we don't have, oh, here it is. If we don't have access to the GoPro. USB-C. Hope everybody's holidays were enjoyable. Get some rest. I did, while also getting some work done. We're almost there. There we go. And we're going to turn this back on as soon as the red light comes on. Okay, let's switch here and see what we get. Nothing. Okay, we're gonna let that sit for a minute, and I'll show you, hopefully that'll kick into gear, and then we'll come back. Okay, so let me get Flutter Flow out of here. So I found this amazing, like, Pine Watch blog post. Not Pine Watch. Yeah, Pine Watch? Yeah, I think so. Your first Bluetooth low energy app with Flutter. And it's from 2020, so it's not so old, but it goes through how to get everything set up in VS Code, which I prefer. Flutter being a Google thing, they like you to use Android Studio, but I'm a VS Code fan myself. And so it kind of goes through like how you get everything set up, installing Flutter and Android and everything. And then it shows you how to like basically debug a BLE app in VS Code, and it has the source code. And so let's bring that up. It should be the last thing I had here. And so I'm not gonna. This isn't gonna be a Flutter tutorial, but let's just like look really quick in this pubspec YAML. Jeez, why this thing hates life. My GoPro is just, I think, done. Oh, look at that. It's not done. All right, let's plug it in and see what happens. Hopefully we get power. Sweet. Okay, good. We'll come back to that. Sorry. This is like again, the only comparison I can draw is like with Node. This is like your package.json where you're saying like, here are what your dependencies are. You have dev dependencies. And so we've got this Flutter Blue. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details on this in this stream, but Flutter Blue is like a project in conflict. I think this is the one where it was built by a person and then they've been like missing in action and people have been submitting pull requests. And so another community member has like a fork of it, which is actually being maintained and getting new updates to like meet new phone requirements as, you know, Android and iOS release new versions of phones and Bluetooth dependencies and things like that. And so it's a little bit of a hot mess, but I'll get to that later. Right now, I just want to see, does the Flutter Blue that comes down right now that exists out in the wild work for provisioning the ESP32? And so that's what I've been working on. Now, in this main, well, I'm not even going to show you the code. Like, you can look at that as an exercise for yourself. And we'll be looking at it in future streams. But this app that this person built, let me switch over to, where are we at? This one. Let's see, get the code. Here we go. It's just this repository right here. And it's awesome. What it does is, I don't know that there's any screenshots. There's screenshots over in the blog post. Is it like finds BLE devices and lists the services and characteristics. These are all BLE terms. And you can like inspect them. And so this was like a dead simple way. It took me about half an hour from start to like proof of concept that this should work using this person's sample code, which was amazing. And so I want to show you what that looks like. So let's switch to the overhead here. Okay, so remember when you plug in my device, the first thing it does is it's going to give you this 4-digit code because it goes into provisioning mode so that you can send Wi-Fi credentials to it. And so I'm going to go ahead and plug that in. Oh, upside down. And you'll see it flash and update, and it'll get a new 4-digit code. So 1772. Great. And I need to turn on my phone here. Okay. And I'm not going to show you. So this all works to like debug through VS Code, which is amazing. And I'm going to be messing around with it after a stream here today. With next steps. Man, now my phone, like technology is giving me a hard time today. Okay. So here we are. You can't, it might be hard to see, but it's this app right here. So I'm going to click on that, and I don't know how well, maybe if I turn off this light, I think it would be most helpful if we turned the brightness down. Yeah, I think that's better. Okay. Okay, so it comes up to this like find devices page, and there's a little search thing down here in the corner. Now remember, this right now is in provisioning mode. Does that matter if I turn that light on? Okay, so I'm gonna hit the search, And like, I don't really understand, and I haven't looked, but like, this is all the BLE devices it's finding, which are way more than I would expect. But I'm thinking that some of these are from like my laptop, and I have a streaming machine over here running an Apple, um, whatever, M1 that's running. And so I've got a router. I don't know if that has any BLE endpoints exposed, but like there's a lot of stuff here. But the one that we're looking for, and I'll try and zoom in here the old fashioned way, is this one right here that says stat feeder. Because I know that that is the BLE device that this is creating. And so all I'm going to do is hit connect. Again, I didn't write any of this code. This is all just a repo I cloned off of GitHub. And hit connect. It says device is disconnected. That's probably hard to see. But now it says device is connected. Cool. Now if I think if I hit refresh, it will find all of the services. Now you see it's got a service 9004. I wonder if I like prop this up, if that would be helpful. So it's closer. That feels like it's a little bit better. Okay. So I'm going to click on service, and it shows all of these characteristics. And so let's switch back here. Nope, to this one. If we come over to the ESP32 docs, and this is where I was kind of nerding out. This is the Wi-Fi provisioning. And if we scroll down the page here, it'll talk about the endpoints. And there's different ways you can do this. You can do it over HTTP server, or you can do it as a BLE GAT server. And you can see it creates endpoint names, and these aren't endpoints in the case of BLE, they're characteristics, but they have names. Prov session, prov scan, prov config, proto ver. And it tells you like what those things are, and it all uses protobuf to communicate. And so if we go back to here, you can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 characteristics. Well, it happens to be that 1, 2, 3, 4. Very interesting. Now, when we expand these characteristics, there is a descriptor. And if I hit the little download arrow here, it gives me an array of integers. And this is because this is how the raw data comes from a BLE characteristic. It's just a list of integers, and that's how the library gets it. But all that is ASCII characters. And so I found this web page, Online String Tools, and we can just write in the ASCII code. So if I looked at and read this off, I do 1112 space 114 space 111 118 45 115 99 97 110. It gives me the string over here, and that is probably small for you to see. Let me see if I can't make that bigger. Okay, let's scroll it here. You can see that list, if we go back here, that list of integers there, 112, 114, 111, 118, this line right here, that's just the ASCII for prov scan. If we come back to the documentation, we can see that that is this endpoint right here. Now, something that I realized as I was going through this is, if you'll notice, all of these have a dash in them. And so if we look back at that thing, the dash, I believe, is this 45 right here. So if we get rid of that, the dash will go away. So we'll put that 45 back. So as just a quick look at this, there's 45, which is the dash, and then there's 4 letters after that. And if we come back here, you can see after the dash, we've got a bunch of letters here. We've got 5 letters here. It just so happens that they're all different lengths, so they're a little easy to read once you know what you're looking for. So if we come back to here, and we open up this characteristic and get its descriptor, I can see after the 45, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 characters. That's going to be this endpoint. Now, I'll get to a point where we're writing code to take that list of integers and turn it into a readable string. But again, just without making any code changes to this application that I downloaded, I can see that indeed the Flutter Blue library is enough to at least enumerate the services and the characteristics so that I can see that. And going a step further, all of these are behind a security mode. Again, with this like proof of possession, this code that's on it, except for proto-ver. Proto-ver is open, and it says immediately after connecting, the client application may fetch the version capabilities from the proto-ver endpoint. All communications to this endpoint are unencrypted, hence necessary information that may be relevant for deciding compatibility can be retrieved before establishing a secure session. So remember, after the dash, this is 3. So if I look back here, a characteristic, I get the descriptor, 45. It's not that one. I've got this characteristic down here. And if I get this descriptor, after the 45, I've got 118, 101, 114. So I know that that's 3 digits. So that's the proto-ver. This is one where if I hit this up, it sends it, it queries it, and then I'll get a response from it. And so let's take a look at that. So I'm going to hit the up arrow to like essentially, like I said, ping the characteristic. And I get this giant, you can see that. That's a much bigger list of integers. It takes a long time to type those in. And so what I did was I already typed them in. Let me copy them from over here. We'll switch back. Let's come over to here. And I'll just paste them in. So this was the list of ints that were in that response. And you can see that this is the response. You get just regular JSON. And that is, again, it shows like the response is in JSON format when you hit the proto-ver characteristic. And this is what it looks like. And so exactly what we would expect. Oh, I need a drink. So this is super exciting because without having to write any code, I was able to see that indeed the Flutter Blue at least is able to connect to my device, get the provisioning endpoints, and I can get information from it. So what are we going to do with that information? Well, that's what's coming up next. So if I look at the code for this, it's really not like most of the Bluetooth is in this main.dart, and you can see we're talking like less than 300 lines of code. So my next step, and I just wanted to show you like indeed Flutter Blue seems to be working so far. My next step is going to be how can I write an abstraction for the ESP32 provisioning service that uses Flutter. I did do a little bit of searching for this. I didn't find anything that looked like it would work or that I felt good about. And so I'm going to build, like I said, an abstraction, an interface to how do I talk to this provisioning device? I've got those 4 endpoints from the documentation to establish a session with it, scan for Wi-Fi networks, and send credentials. And the great thing is I have a template for that in the 2 apps from Espressive. So the iOS and the Android, they have their own BLE libraries, but they've created sort of a class interface around that of how you interact with creating a session and doing all those operations. I can use that as a starting point and essentially port it to Flutter. Make sense? So that is what I'm currently working on. It's very promising so far, and if I can just get to a point where I'll just write a straight Dart library. So I'm not worried about the UI at all right now, even though I spent way too much time in Flutter Flow and like getting the layout all put together. Right now, my time is being spent writing just a raw Dart class that is the interface to the ESP32 provisioning service to see if, just from raw code here, I can hit a button and have it go through the process of provisioning my my device. So, and if I could do that, that's really exciting. Now I can make the UI as crazy as I want, to do as many things as I want, and I'll have it's a code once, deploy twice solution for my configuration app, which I'm really excited about. So that's what's going on. I'm still struggling with the streaming, me just fumbling around trying to learn stuff versus things like this where I'm showing you chunks of progress. And so try to stream as much of that as I can to show you how it's going. And all of this, what makes me really excited about it is building value like this. If I can get a Flutter library that interacts with ESP32 provisioning service, I feel like that is something that would be useful to a ton of people. That's not a very custom thing for me. That's valuable to others. And so all of these things that I'm working on technology-wise on the product right now are to make the platform that I'm building itself more valuable and capable to handle sort of the ideas product-wise going forward. So that is what's happening. That's where we're at. I'm really excited, making progress on that. And so just wanted to share that with you. So I'd say if you have any questions, ask me, but I'm learning and figuring this out as we go. So I'm really excited to see if I can get, hopefully in the next week or so, a proof of concept of actually provisioning the device through Flutter. So I will keep you posted on that. I appreciate everybody that's watching and continues to watch. Sorry for the long break. I'm back at it now. Like I said, I haven't been not working. I just haven't been sharing. So I'm going to try to be in the habit of sharing more. So thanks so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day and week, and we'll catch you next time.